Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes, where we take a deep dive into the extraordinary book, Bare Feet, Iron Will. Stories from the Other Side of Vietnam's Battlefields by James G. Zumwalt. Our mission today is, well, it's to step onto battlefields and into homes from a perspective, one we rarely hear in the West. This deep dive is really about understanding the Vietnamese experience of the war, showcasing their incredible iron will and ingenuity against just overwhelming technological odds, and also exploring the profound human cost, really from all sides.
Yeah, and what's so compelling about this book right from the start is how it lays out these core themes. You've got this stark contrast between iron will and bare feet.
Right.
We're going to trace, the unwavering determination of the Vietnamese people, their frankly astonishing resourcefulness when facing incredible hardship, and of course the staggering civilian and military suffering they went through. Ultimately, this deep dive is, I think, about that long, complex road towards understanding, maybe even reconciliation. We'll connect the dots through their unique ways of fighting, surviving, and, even healing. It's a journey into human resilience, really.
And what makes this journey so powerful, I think, is the author's own connection. It's deeply personal.
Yeah.
James G. Zumwalt's father, Vice Admiral Zumwalt, and his brother Elmo, they both struggled with and tragically died from Agent Orange-related cancers after serving in Vietnam.
It's a profound family connection.
Exactly. That loss, that very real personal loss, it seems like it really motivated James Zumwalt to undertake this remarkable journey. It kind of begs the question, doesn't it?
Sure.
How much did that shape how he could connect with people once seen as, the enemy?
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial point. His personal experience was, without doubt, the catalyst. For him, it wasn't just about listing events chronologically. It was a deep desire to understand the war from the other side, the Vietnamese side, to find some common ground. His journey involved these extensive, really personal interviews with former fighters, people who fought against America. And that just offers a truly unique lens on the conflict. It shifts the narrative, doesn't it, from a sort of distant historical account into something much more about shared humanity, pushing past the usual stories to find maybe a fuller, more empathetic truth.
And that search for understanding leads pretty quickly to this central idea of iron will.
Yeah.
It's not just a catchy title. It's presented as this unyielding spirit of the Vietnamese people. It wasn't lessened by their lack of tech, their bare feet, so to speak,
Right.
but was this inner strength, this capacity to endure immense hardship. It actually reminds me of that General Patton quote, Wars may be fought with weapons, but they are won by people. And the Vietnamese really seemed to embody that, believing victory came down to human determination, not just who had the biggest arsenal. What's the sort of wider implication there, do you think, for how we understand conflict in general?
Well, it's a really profound lesson in asymmetric warfare, isn't it?
Right.
This iron will, it wasn't just an emotional thing. It was actually a strategic asset. And it permeated every part of their society, especially among civilians who were right there at the heart of the storm. It showed pretty clearly that superior technology can be, neutralized by a combination of just sheer resolve and ingenuity, a will to basically outsuffer and outthink the opponent.
You see this so clearly in that story of me. She was a teacher, and her whole family just got drawn deep into the war.
Yeah, that one really sticks with you.
Her sons joined the fight. The book shares Ty's letter to his parents, explaining why he felt he had to go. It's incredibly moving. Then the news comes, Dai killed, Dao severely wounded. Me's first reaction is just numbness, like a kind of self-preservation kicks in. But the tears finally came when Dao, wounded but alive, just unexpectedly shows up again. It's such a universal picture, isn't it? A mother's grief and relief, just laid bare by war.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the scale of that human cost, it's almost impossible to fully grasp. You mentioned the Army Museum in Hanoi.
Yeah?
They have this exhibit listing mothers who lost multiple children.
Oh, wow.
We read about Nguyen Thi Diem. She lost her husband and 2 sons. And Tran Thi Trang, a husband and 5 sons lost, with a 6th wounded.
5 sons.
Yeah. And in Saigon alone, over 1,400 mothers lost 3 or more sons. The book really makes the point, though, that it doesn't matter the number. The impact was utterly devastating.
Of course.
It's a powerful reminder, We talk about war with statistics, but each number is an immeasurable personal tragedy. A family changed forever.
And this suffering, this endurance, it reached even the children. Banat's story evacuated as a child to our base. It was an NLF headquarters, but also a school.
Right, trying to maintain some normalcy amidst chaos.
But they faced regular bombings. And tragically, one day, Their school bunker, because it lacked a proper bomb shelter, was hit. 13 children and 2 adults were killed.
Just awful.
Oh. After that, Bin was sent north on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around that level of suffering for a child. What were the daily challenges they faced?
Yeah.
The ones that really show that iron will, even in kids.
Well, the challenges on the trail were immense. Malaria was everywhere. Food was incredibly scarce. They had these little balls of cooked rice, compacted inside pieces of American parachute cloth, believe it or not. And they'd supplement that with bamboo shoots they found in the jungle.
Wow.
And there was this interesting bartering system, too, with the local indigenous groups. The ethnics, as the book calls them. Bin tells this story where someone tried to trade a watch for a pig.
Okay.
But the local guy refused because he said he couldn't swim with it.
Huh. Okay, that's unexpected.
It is. But it subtly highlights these vastly different realities, doesn't it? Different priorities. Even in desperation, you see these cultural nuances shaping things.
And this brings us right back to the civilian toll. 2 million Vietnamese casualties. That number is just staggering.
It really is.
Hanoi's Christmas Nightmare in 1972, that really drives it home. Hoa's account of children wearing these plant-like things, taught to lie face down so the stalks would disguise them from the air. Her belief that pilots just shot at anything that moved. It's such a haunting image of constant fear.
And Colonel Lequin's account, chilling. People came back out onto the streets in Com Thien on Christmas Day.
Why?
They believed, or maybe hoped, that U.S. pilots wouldn't bomb during the holiday. It led to this huge loss of life.
Oh, no.
And Tung's story, surviving, trapped in a collapsed shelter, then finding out his wife and son's shelter was just gone. No signs to be found, he said.
Heartbreaking.
It just underscores the devastation on civilians. It challenges any idea that war is just, soldiers fighting soldiers. These are the deep wounds, psychological and physical, that scar a society.
But maybe one of the most, incredible stories of survival, of just sheer human will, is Long's giving birth.
Oh, that story.
In a makeshift frog shelter during the bombings. Can you even imagine? No anesthesia, multiple painful attempts to stitch her up by candlelight.
In the cold, lack of oxygen.
Feeling like she was in a coffin, she said, and her newborn screaming like a siren. She called it the most terrible night of my entire life.
How could it not be?
And then on a smaller scale, but just as heartbreaking, that story of the boy whose last act was trying to save his pet canaries. It just nails that personal, quiet devastation amid all the chaos. A moment of profound humanity, clinging to something beautiful while the world collapses.
Moving on from that sheer human cost, though, we have to talk about the ingenuity, the adaptation. It was absolutely vital for survival. The Ho Chi Minh Trail is maybe the prime example of that iron will made real. It started with human pack mules, like Nguyen Viet Sin. Get this.
Okay.
He carried 55 tons over more than 41,000 kilometers. That's basically like walking the equator.
Wow.
Carrying his own body weight the whole time. But then it evolved, modified bicycles, elephants, Soviet trucks eventually.
Right.
It wasn't just cleverness. It showed a fundamental shift in how you could wage war against a technologically superior enemy. You basically make their advantages less relevant through sheer will and adapting to the environment. It's a masterclass, really, in how resourcefulness can be overwhelming force.
And that's where it gets really fascinating, doesn't it? The strategic genius they applied to counter that air power.
Exactly.
They built underground facilities, these smokeless kitchens with long vents to hide the smoke, even opera house caves.
Yeah, big enough to hold 1,000 troops, supposedly impenetrable to bombs.
And they had hospitals and munition labs down there, too.
Underground, yes. And maybe the most ingenious thing, the invisible bridges.
Tell me about those.
Inflatable platforms. They had emerged from rivers at night for troops and supplies to cross. And then submerged during the day to avoid being spotted from the air.
That is incredible. That level of adaptation, it just speaks volumes about their determination to win no matter what.
And if the trail was the lifeline, then the Cu Chi tunnels. That was the war fought underground.
Right, the war down under.
This incredibly complex multi-level tunnel system. It grew from maybe 10% coverage in 1954 to something like 340 kilometers by 1975. Just astonishing.
How did they use them against the Americans, the tunnel rats?
Well, they had really complex designs, lots of booby traps, obviously, ambush points. For example, they designed sections where an intruder would have to lift their hands to climb up.
Making them vulnerable.
Exactly, vulnerable to being stabbed from above or having a grenade dropped on them. The sheer scale and complexity of this underground world. It's mind-boggling. It shows this deep grasp of guerrilla tactics and an almost unbelievable commitment.
It makes you wonder, how did they sustain themselves down there, let alone innovate in those awful conditions?
Their resourcefulness was just off the charts, making surgical tools from bits of unexploded American bombs.
Seriously?
Yep. Syringes from liquefied glass, getting alcohol for antiseptic from, like, ethnic rice wine.
Wow.
There's even this disturbing but kind of amazing account of doing surgery inside an elephant's belly.
Wait, what? Why?
Because the hide was so thick, it apparently provided a sterile environment,
Yeah.
using the animal like a makeshift operating room.
That is something else.
It is. And while Cu Chi saw huge casualties, over 30,000, maybe 80% from American actions, it's still this source of immense pride for them. In their determination, their will.
Yeah.
It really highlights the lengths people will go to, not just to survive, but to keep their dignity and fight for what they believe is their future.
Moving beyond the battlefield itself, the book digs into the medical realities for the Vietnamese soldiers, and they were harsh.
Incredibly harsh. Severe malaria was rampant. Gut perforations from chronic diarrhea, vitamin deficiencies leading to blindness or even heart failure,
And amputations.
often without anesthesia. Patients screaming, losing consciousness,
Yeah.
but choosing life. They'd innovate constantly,
How so?
using things like turmeric or honey as antiseptics when they had nothing else. Bamboo shoots for emergency tracheotomies,
So.
using screws from wrecked airplanes to fix broken bones.
Wow.
There's even an account of using an exhaust pipe from a downed helicopter as a brace for a broken limb.
Resourceful doesn't even begin to cover it.
No, it's this picture of profound suffering, side by side with desperate, often brilliant innovation.
And zooming out again to the bigger picture, the war really was this constant chess match, wasn't it? Tactics and counter-tactics.
Absolutely. Their air defense is a great example.
How did they counter the U.S. air power?
Well, they got creative. With their main surface-to-air missiles, the SA-2s, they developed this technique, launching them unguided first.
Unguided.
Yeah, then activating the guidance radar only at the last moment. That way, American pilots couldn't easily detect the radar beam early and target the launch site.
Clever.
Very. They also deployed these things called balloon valleys, basically.
Yeah.
Big balloons tethered at different heights to try and snag low-flying aircraft,
Did that work?
apparently. One American A-6 intruder plane crashed after sucking a balloon into its engine. It just shows how creative you can get when facing a technologically superior enemy.
And then the Americans brought in the AC-130 Spectre. That was a game changer, right?
Oh yeah, devastating gunship, especially at night with its forward-looking infrared FLIR.
Which sees heat signatures.
Right. And moving target indicator radar, MTI, tracking things on the ground. It made night movement incredibly dangerous for the Vietnamese.
So how did they counter that?
General Dong Sinh Nguyen came up with countermeasures. He developed the K-Road System, K for hidden, and large-scale deception plans, creating fake roads, even fake truck convoys, to draw the Spectre's fire. Meanwhile, the real convoys would use different concealed routes that had just been cleared.
Wow, a sophisticated game of cat and mouse.
Exactly. It underscores the intellectual battle that was being waged right alongside the physical one.
What's really fascinating, though, is how these stories, often brutal stories, lead to these moments of, well, confrontation, but then coexistence and maybe even reconciliation. The author's meeting with General Feng, the man who actually tried to assassinate his father years before.
That's an extraordinary moment in the book.
The sheer irony of it, and the forgiveness implied, it culminates with the author saying, "The fortunate thing, General, is that you missed."
Yeah.
It's just such a powerful testament to moving beyond the conflict, finding common ground after all that trauma, personal and national. It forces you to rethink what enemy even means.
And that capacity for humanity, it wasn't just one-sided. There's the story from Juan, the Vietnamese soldier who captured John McCain.
Right, I remember that.
Despite his initial anger, wanting revenge because his own comrades had been killed, he stuck to orders. Treat POWs humanely.
And he says that saved McCain's life.
He explicitly says his momentary hesitation, choosing to follow orders, saved the pilot's life. It shows this adherence to principle, a kind of moral compass, even in the heat of battle, that often gets lost in the big historical narratives.
The key question the book raises is, what's the true cost of war beyond the physical damage? The author quotes Bao Ninh, a Vietnamese novelist. His reflection is really powerful. The ultimate sorrow of war is we learn only after the shooting stops how much we share in common with our enemies.
That hits hard, doesn't it?
Yeah, it suggests that the toughest part might be realizing that shared humanity that was hidden by the fighting.
And on a practical level, looking towards reconciliation, Hanoi did cooperate significantly on resolving MIPOW cases.
How so?
Things like giving quick authorization for search teams, sharing information they found in old soldiers' diaries. They even helped confirm the case of Lieutenant Colonel A. Peter Dewey.
America's first casualty in Vietnam, back in 1945.
That's the one. He'd actually warned against the French trying to reoccupy Vietnam. His death really highlights this crucial missed opportunity, way back then, for potential U.S.-Vietnam relations.
Interesting.
And it wasn't just about cooperation with the U.S. The book also mentions Hanoi's distrust of some of its own allies.
Like who?
Like China. Apparently, they supplied some faulty mortar rounds.
Mm-hmm.
In North Korea, their pilots insisted on fighting their own way and suffered heavy losses.
So Vietnam preferred to
go it alone, often. It underscores their fierce independence, their self-reliance, even if it meant turning down help from fellow communist states. It's a subtle point, but tells you something about the complex politics of the time.
So what does this all mean for us, listening today, this deep dive into bare feet, iron will? It reminds us that the Vietnamese belief in fighting for their heritage, their independence, a legacy for their kids, that was incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
The book's main purpose seems to be providing that space, that forum, to hear the often unrecognized suffering of the Vietnamese people. And despite all the governmental differences, that iron will ultimately connects to these really common human desires, doesn't it? For peace, happiness, free will. It's a profound reminder that the reasons behind conflict are often deeply human, universal even.
And the author had this aha moment that just brings it all home perfectly.
What was that?
After an interview, he watched this Vietnamese colonel who just finished recounting these bloody battles tenderly pick up and embrace his 3-year-old grandchild.
Oh, wow.
That image.
Yeah.
It's not just about that one man. It's this powerful reminder that underneath the uniforms, the politics, the conflict, it's those universal desires for family, for a future, for peace. That's what really drives people on all sides.
Yeah.
It humanizes the enemy and just highlights that shared humanity that war so often hides.
This deep dive into bare feet, iron will, really does remind us. History is never just one side of the story. Understanding the profound will, the sacrifice of the Vietnamese people, it doesn't just add to our knowledge. It offers really crucial lessons, I think, for appreciating different perspectives, maybe even for preventing future conflicts.
Indeed. It really is a powerful call to actively seek out those narratives, the ones that challenge our assumptions.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener. What stories from the other side of history, or maybe even in your own life, have shaped your understanding in unexpected ways? And maybe, how might we seek out more of those perspectives to build a more complete picture of the world around us?